Most people open AI when they don't know where to start. That's the natural move. Blank page, no direction. Something needs to get done. So you open the tool and let it begin. But there's a small group of people who do one thing differently. Before they open anything, they make a first move on their own. Not a finished thought, not something polished. A rough answer, a weak draft, a guess they're probably wrong about, a position they haven't tested yet. Something with enough shape for the tool to push against. And then they ask. And what comes back doesn't replace what they had. It collides with it. The places where it agrees with them, they notice. The places where it doesn't, they notice more. From the outside, it looks like the same thing everyone else does. Same tool, same question, same answer. But they came in with something. And that changes everything that happens next. Here's why most people don't do this. Coming in with nothing feels like the efficient choice. You don't know the answer. The tool probably has something useful. Why waste time on a wrong guess when you can skip to something better? And that logic is hard to argue with, except for one thing. The moment you open a blank prompt, the tool starts shaping the direction. Not because it's trying to, just because something has to go first. And when nothing comes from you first, the tool's structure becomes your starting point. Its categories, its framing, its sense of what the question is actually about. There's nothing wrong with using that, but you've handed over the first move. And the first move turns out to matter more than it looks, because the direction thinking goes in depends heavily on where it starts. A rough guess made before asking gives you a reference point, something to compare the answer against, something that can be confirmed, contradicted, or complicated. Without it, the answer doesn't land on anything. It just arrives, and you take it, not because you chose to, because there was nothing else there yet.
Before we begin, if you value quiet, thoughtful content like this, subscribing helps this channel grow and makes it possible to keep creating videos without noise or hype. Thank you for being here. Now, let's begin.
Here's what this actually looks like. Not a system, not a process, just a small move that happens before anything opens. Before asking for ideas, they write 3 of their own. Rough ones, incomplete ones, ones they're not sure about. Before asking for a strategy, they write down the direction they're already leaning toward. Before asking for a solution, they try to explain the problem in their own words first. Not to get it right, to have something in the room when the answer arrives. Because when you come in with something, the answer has something to work against. And the friction between what you thought and what came back, that's where the useful part happens. Not in the answer itself, in the gap between your first move and what followed it. Think about the last time you came to something with a position. Not a finished argument, just an initial lean. A sense of where you stood before anyone else weighed in. And then someone pushed back. Or something came back that didn't quite fit what you expected. And you had to decide, does this change what I think? Or does it just complicate it? That moment, the moment of deciding what to do with information that doesn't fully agree with you, that's where judgment forms. not from receiving answers.
From having something that answers can land on. And here's what happens when you build that habit consistently. You stop being someone who finds out what to think by asking. You become someone who already has a direction and uses the tool to pressure test it. That's a different relationship with both the tool and the thinking. And it compounds. Every first move you make, even a wrong one, adds to your sense of where you stand. What you tend to see first, what you tend to miss, what assumptions you tend to bring in that need to be checked.
That self-knowledge doesn't come from answers. It comes from noticing the gap between your first move and what followed.
Here's where the advantage becomes real. Most people who use AI regularly are getting very good at receiving, at processing what comes back, at working with what the tool produces. And that's genuinely useful. But there's a second skill, one that's getting rarer, that matters more in the long run. Knowing where you stand before anything else shapes the direction. And here's what's happening. Every time someone opens a blank prompt, every time the tool makes the first move, a small opportunity gets missed. Not a dramatic one, just the chance to notice, what do I actually think about this? Most people skip that question because the answer is available faster somewhere else. And over time, they get better at working with what they're given and less practiced at generating a direction on their own. Here's what that looks like in practice. Before AI was always there, you'd sit down to write, decide, plan, with a rough sense of direction. Even if it was wrong, you had a lean.
Now, when you sit down to think, the first thing that happens is you reach for the tool. Not because you're lazy, because that's what the workflow became. Open, ask, receive, proceed. And somewhere in that workflow, the step where you figured out what you thought first got removed. Not intentionally, just it stopped being necessary. And when you try to start without it, the blank page feels different than it used to. Not harder, emptier. The people with the advantage are doing the opposite. They're building the internal muscle that most people are quietly letting go of. Because they understood something early. The tool is most useful when it has something real to push against. And they make sure that something is always there.
If this feels familiar so far, not as information, but as something you've been dealing with, we keep a growing collection of prompts, tools, and simple frameworks designed to help you think more clearly, start more easily, and work better in this environment. We add to it over time. Nothing overwhelming, just practical resources you can return to when you need them. If you want access, you will find it in the description. Now, let's continue.
Here's what's worth understanding. This isn't about being smarter. It's not about having better ideas or more original thinking, or some natural advantage that some people have and others don't. It's about one small moment. The moment before you open anything, where you have a question, and before you ask it, you give yourself a moment to notice what you already think. Not to get it right, not to impress anyone, just to have something in the room. That's the whole habit. And the people who keep doing it aren't doing something complicated. They're just not skipping that moment. They're not letting the blank prompt be the first thing in the conversation. They put something there first. And everything that happens after, the answer, the friction, the gap, the place where it changed their thinking, all of that becomes more useful because something was there to meet it. the moment is still available. Every time. Before you type anything. Before the tool gave you a direction, did you already have one? The people pulling ahead with AI aren't using a better version of the tool. They're using a better version of themselves before the tool enters the room. Not a smarter version, not a more prepared version, just one that shows up with something already there. A direction, a guess, a position that might be wrong, enough to make the conversation a conversation rather than a delivery. And here's what that builds over time. Not just better outputs, a clearer sense of where you stand, what you actually think, what changes your mind and what doesn't. That clarity doesn't come from asking better questions. It comes from having something of your own and being willing to let it be.
It comes from having something of your own and being willing to let it be challenged. And there's something underneath all of this worth going further into. Because it's not just about what you bring to the tool. It's about what happens to your opinions and beliefs when nothing challenges them anymore. That's where this goes next.
If you made it this far, it means this topic matters to you. In the next video, we continue building on this with clearer understanding, practical perspective, and ideas you can actually use. Following the channel really helps us keep developing content like this and adding more resources over time. The next video continues from here. You can watch it now.